if I want to move to framing success a little bit, so I want to shift into mindset. Do we have a brain mechanic on this show? For listeners that don't know, Max has a master's degree in performance psychology. So step up to the podium. We should put a bright sprite and we can just sit back and relax. In fact, as we sit here, graciously hosted by Joel and Sarah. Joel got wines. Nancy, get the wine because Max is speaking. So thank you very much. But let's talk about race day mindset a little bit. And I've got a few questions here that I want to go through. And I guess the first one is defining athlete success on race day. And this is as we're going into a race. It is so easy for athletes of all level to define success purely in terms of either time. You know, I've been X hours in an Ironman, I need to go faster. So PRs, obviously, placement, qualification, pass, fail. When we're coaching our athletes, how do we talk to them about defining success? How do we try and put their mind space leading into a race so that we can get the very best performance out of them? I'm going to put you on the spot. I put Barry on the spot first last time, so I'm going to lead you in.
I think it starts with way before taper, way before the race. If you're just talking about that 2 weeks prior to the race, you're not doing a good job as a coach, in my opinion. We recently had a checkpoint within our Purple Patch ecosystem with athletes called ARC, so assessment, reflection, and checking in. And it really even starts at those moments, having open communication with your athlete. What are your goals? What's your why? What are you working towards? Why are you engaging in the sport of triathlon or running marathons? And then based off of that, you can start to have the conversation of what does success look like in this race? Because if an athlete, for example, is starting to get caught up in the time, but 3 months prior, you had several conversations about their why is their family and to be a better leader at work, you need to go back to that and say, hey, remember the conversations we had? It's not about whether you finish in 5.5 or 5 hours and 45 minutes. You have other goals that we're working towards, and this race is a part of that picture. So I think framing what success looks like in the race starts with getting clear with your athletes on their goals, on their why, prior to engaging even in the race build. And then you can move forward and you can then within the race start to break down specific goals that they want to accomplish within the race. And that's going to depend on what the race is. Is it an A race or is it a B race? Maybe there's some more process-driven goals of something specific to a specific discipline. So there's a lot of context there, but I think it starts prior is my initial bird's eye view answer.
I have a lot to say, so I'm going to let you go.
I think it's okay to say, I want to see if I can hit the podium.
Yes.
I think it's okay. I want to try and break 5 hours for the first time. I think it's okay to have those goals. But I also think it's really important that we don't get shackled to that expectation, right? Yeah. On both sides, right? Don't be limited by what your potential could be and don't sell yourself too short. So,
I'm going to jump in here. I'm so glad you said that because let's not lose sight of the fact that winning is really fun. Yes. You know, whatever your version of winning is, and it is really important to have really lofty, really ambitious goals to be like, yeah, I do want to qualify, or I do want a podium, or I do want a PR, etc. And I also want to give my scope to if my mythical time that I want to go is under 5 hours and a half Ironman, that actually you can go 4:40 maybe, you know, like you want to be free to absolutely smash it at the same time. And so when I like to have those discussions first and be like, yeah, like that's really, and make it exciting, but then I'll say, okay, how do we get there? And because the truth is that all of those things are still ultimately outputs, you know, they're end results, and so much can happen and will happen in the chaos of racing. So that is a aspiration, that is a goal, that is something that is going to keep us going when things get really tough. Now let's focus on the inputs that are going to get you there, and let's define that. And I always like to talk to athletes about two things. The first is a commitment and it's not a motivation, it's a commitment that when the gun goes off and they're at the start line, no matter what happens over the course of the day, the one way to guarantee that you can get pride, satisfaction, and learning is to remain committed to get from A to B as fast as you can. That is a commitment. That's the important thing. It's not a desire. So you got to get that to the depths of yourself. No matter what happens, flat tires, mechanicals, legs feel bad, cramping, etc. That's your first commitment. And then the second thing is, what are the actions? What are the inputs necessary for you to go around your pacing, your fueling, your management stuff to lead you to then the best result of the day? That's a stepping stone. That's what I have with mindset.
My point, I completely agree with both of you. My point, I think it goes back to that. In the beginning of a build, you need to know if the athlete wants to hit a certain time. You need to know their lofty, ambitious goal, because then you can hold them to the standard. I think athletes go into races really anxious and not confident because they say they have one goal, but they haven't had the inputs.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to qualify, well, there's a standard that you need to hold in your training to be able to qualify. And if you haven't done that in training, well, then maybe going into the race, you need to set expectations. So I think part of it is based on what's happened in the athlete's life going into the build, helping them set some really realistic expectations based off of where they are going into that race.
Yeah.
And if they're really fit and if they've managed to have a good build and if they're primed, then yes, it's like, let's get really nitty gritty about we're trying to hit specific paces in the run. We want to bike in a certain time and really get detailed about the race. And for athletes that are on the other end of the spectrum, they may need a little bit more broad stroke goals for how they want to feel at different points in the race and some less metric driven race goals.
How do you help athletes avoid being derailed by things that are out of their control? So weather, logistical challenges, equipment challenges, competition is one. People get distracted. How do you focus on that?
It's a trainable. That mindset approach is trainable, and so that's something you should be thinking about week by week during training sessions, when you're stuck out on weekends, whenever you're doing your hard work. Again, we have tons of time-starved athletes in Purple Patch. We can talk about it a lot, and one of the hallmarks of being a time-starved athlete is that your training week rarely goes as planned. And so, in and of just navigating your training week by week, and having to go with the flow about that perfect rhythm that we've already said we really want to see, rarely does that happen. I think for a lot of athletes, just how you navigate that week in, week out sets you up to then navigate that same type of uncertainty and unpredictable conditions that you can arrive at on race day, right?
And perhaps this is a slightly different point, but you talked about uncertainty and training opportunity, because ultimately race day performance is really just an expression of your preparation. Yeah. So let's talk about, if we can get, for a triathlete, for example, your best swim training session, your best bike training session, your best run training session in a single day, that is a dream race performance. Like that's really what is it, just an expression. But it comes back, even yesterday at this training camp, one of the things that we really realized, we were doing a bunch of hill repetitions on the bike, and a lot of people were struggling. They were, by definition, as we love to do here, out of their comfort zone. You had one particular athlete that was very much out of her comfort zone. And we realized she wants to do an Ironman this summer. And we realized, okay, in that Ironman, she is going to be incredibly uncomfortable, and she is going to go through, we can promise her, very dark times. And it was the most powerful experience for her because she didn't turn her back on yesterday. She lent into the exposure with your coaching, and she really grew. So training is an opportunity to actually get the mind ready for racing in many ways.
Yeah. Well, in your in that particular situation yesterday, there was a lot of, I can't do this. I can't do this. I think I need to stop. But it's changing that narrative in your head. What if I can? What happens if? And that's a pretty powerful change to see what can happen. And sure enough, she got up that hill. Confidence swells.
Joy
Swells.
Yep.
Yeah.
Confidence builds.
Yep. You just get stronger. What else can I do now? And it builds on itself.